Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. So the title we've got here is, Does it matter where you publish your research? And I hope that by the end of the 90 minutes we've got for this workshop, that you will have the answer to that question. But I imagine most of you already know the answer to that question, but we'll have a look at some interesting information. So we're all going to present. So I'm going to let everyone introduce themselves as their turn comes up. So most of you know me already. I'm Irene Glendinning. I'm from Coventry University in the UK, and I'm the leader of the NI working group that used to be called INADIT, and INADIT stood for Integrity in Publishing, Dissemination and Publishing. We thought that was too complicated, so we're going to rename ourselves EPAD. EPAD standing for Ethical Publishing and Dissemination. So some things do get simpler, and some things don't. So this is roughly describes what we're going to do and how we're going to use the 90 minutes. I'm a bit concerned that it's not as interactive as we were intending it to be, because we've all put our little bits together. So what we would like to encourage you to do is to interact through the chat and through the questions, and we'll every so often we will stop and pick up some of your questions, but there will be an opportunity for you to input at different points during the presentation. So this is I'm going to do the introduction. Salim's going to do the background on publishing. Milan's going to talk about some research he's conducted using the core data and what he found from that. Then Shiva's going to talk about who uses PPJs, plus we're using to mean potentially predatory journals, because it's not a definite black and white thing. And then Sonia's going to talk about the difference between a potentially predatory and reputable publishing. And then I'm going to sum up at the end. So that's roughly what we're going to do, if it all works nicely. Okay, so I'm going to start off by just introducing the working group. So as you know, probably most of you will know, the European Network for Academic Integrity has lots of different working groups. So we established this working group perhaps a couple of years ago. And so basically we're looking into integrity in publishing, but also we're not ruling out integrity in other forms of dissemination, because we know that ethical publishing is also often involved with running fake conferences or conferences that are not reputable. So we're looking at all of those areas. And the mission of the working group then is, quite simply, we want to reduce the impact of disreputable publishers and fraudulent academic events. And in order to do that, we have a list of aims and objectives there, which I won't read out to you, but those are all on the website. And so we are a group of interested people who are all actively involved and in different ways in this topic. And one of the ways we want to try to reduce the impact is by education and dissemination of good practice, but also to events like this to raise awareness. People might not be fully aware of all the implications. So right at the bottom of the screen here is a link to the web page that talks about the working group. And if you want to join our working group, you're very welcome, but certainly have a listen to what we have to say. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to Salim, and I should be able to give control to Salim at this point. So Salim, if you'd like to take control, you're in charge.
Okay, thank you, Irene, for the lovely introduction of our working group. And I'd like to welcome you all to this session. Before we deal with possibly predatory publishers, here, firstly, we will try to establish some background information about publishing practices. Why we have predatory publishers. We will try to understand this by checking what happened with the publishing models. First, I'd like to call your attention to traditional publishing model, which worked usually properly, let's say, for example, until the new millennium. However, there were some issues involved in this model, and the issues were related to financial concerns, such as price subscription to journals, and when we see in the history serials crisis, this is referring to periodicals, and the subscription fee for the institutions for the periodicals became too much, and they were unable to subscribe to new journals, new issues. So that was the issue at that time. And people all around the world started to think that publishers are acting as monopolists. And all these financial concerns later resulted in limited access to academic publications by scholars. However, our basic aim with this traditional model was making scholarly publications available to academics or students by means of institutional libraries. So they use a subscription-based model. However, later, because of financial concerns, the model did not work properly. And taking the advantage of technological developments and the internet technology, later some people started to think about how to deal with this issue. And they proposed open access publishing model as a reaction to traditional publishing model. Indeed, it was a reaction to pricey subscription. So that was the main concern. The aim of open access publishing model was optimizing the access. So anyone who has internet connection would be able to view, download the articles, digital copies of the articles. So if we allow anyone to read the articles, it means that we are maximizing the implications of research results. So the only issue with regards to open access publication was having internet connection. And when we check the model, we see different applications. I mean, we can talk about 3 different applications of the model, namely as green open access, gold open access, and hybrid open access. For green open access, which requires collaboration of institutions again, and institutional repositories make the publication available freely for people. When it comes to the second one, gold open access, this time the article becomes freely available immediately after its publication. However, the problem here is this may require a fee by the author. And for the third option, this is hybrid open access, combines institutional repository and also again may require some fee by the author. Again, we have some issues here when it comes to open access publishing model. Main concerns are related to research quality, and which is also in connection with possibly predatory publishers or predatory publishers. Before moving to what we mean by predatory publishers, I'd like to call your attention also to preprints, which are quite fashionable recently. Indeed, preprints were initially used for publishing a paper before publication. I mean, you could publish your paper so that when your paper is waiting in the queue for the journal, people would read it and cite your paper. However, recently we see another application, another use of preprints in the form of making papers, publications, open access. So it functions like a green open access. So as we see here, we have a movement starting from traditional publishing, moving towards open access, and recently involving preprints. Okay, here we see the figure illustrating how gold open access model works. Remember, the aim here is maximizing dissemination of the research so that we could increase its efficiency and then social impact. How does it work? First, a research project is funded. It is publicly funded, and researchers finalize their report, submit their report to a journal, submit their manuscript, and then the journal starts the peer review process for the manuscript. And then, let's say, for example, the editor decides to publish the manuscript. Then what happens in this model? Authors retain the copyright of the article. However, they are going to give the grant to the publishers in order to publish their papers. However, in this model, authors will be asked to pay a fee. This is usually called as article processing charges. And then after their papers are published, it will be immediately accessible to anyone who has internet connection. Such publications, gold open access publications, might be licensed under Creative Commons or some others, for example. So it gives the other people, it gives the public the access and to reuse, considering the, of course, copyright issues. They're under open licenses. Of course, the final result is supposed to be perfect here because we are making our research accessible by anyone. So it means that we are increasing our readership. So we are maximizing the dissemination. However, we have a drawback here. What is the drawback? Indeed, the drawback is a very important one, as we identified at the 5th step, which is order processing charges. So what happens here? The authors or the institutions, they are expected to cover article processing charges. So they will be paying to the journals to make their papers publishable. So what is bad here, or what risks do we have at this step? Although it seems to be a good model in terms of accelerating scientific progress, at the further step, we see that indeed it causes something else. Okay, the main aim is a good and effective model for science publications in order to accelerate dissemination. However, later, what do we see in the literature? We see that we now have predatory journals. Why do we have them? Because of the involvement of article processing charges. Some people with bad intentions who do not have academic concerns, a contribution to academia, they take this as an opportunity to become rich. So that is the issue, the main issue that we have regarding open access publishing models. Before I leave the word to my colleague Milan, I'm just trying to go back, but it doesn't work for some reason. I'd like to familiarize you I'm sure you are already familiar with these terminologies, but there might be some people who are new in the field. So I'd like to ensure that we are talking about the same things with these terminologies. What are they? The first one, predatory journals. What do we mean by predatory journals? Indeed, here in this definition, we see that predatory journals and publishers are entities that prioritize self-interest at the expense of scholarship. So the main concern here is no concern with academia, with scholarship. So they are giving priority to their self-interest, and they are trying to make money by using these publication opportunities. So we learn about their characterization here, such as, for example, false or misleading information, deviation from best editorial or publication practices, lack of transparency, or using aggressive or indiscriminate solicitation practices. We will see some examples at the end of the presentation today. Okay, what happens at the second step with vanity press? This time when we come to vanity press, as you see here in this definition, vanity publishing is a service whereby authors are charged to have their work published. Okay, so when we read the definition, so we may assume that, okay, it is quite similar to predatory publishers. What makes vanity press different from predatory publishers? Okay, we need to read the second sentence here. For vanity press, vanity publishers, they will be asking the authors to buy their own work after it becomes accessible by the others. Indeed, vanity press will not be publishing hard copies. They will be preparing the printout version, and in demand they will be printing individual copies and then selling them at extremely high rates. And what makes vanity press different from predatory publishers, the other important criterion here is they never claim they run peer review process. However, predatory publishers, they claim that they run peer review process. However, they don't run peer review process, or they don't run effective peer review process. So that makes vanity press different from predatory publishers. Okay, the third terminology, key terminology here will be hijacked journals. If you are familiar with blacklists, such as, for example, Jeffrey Beall'slist, you already know about hijacked lists. Here I have the definition from Beall, and you see that sometimes someone will create a counterfeit website that pretends to be the website of a legitimate scholarly journal. Okay, what do? I create a web page, and I'm imitating another reputable journal. And then after creating the web page, which seems to be quite similar to the original one, I'm sending invitations to scholars and claiming that I am the editor of this reputable journal and I will be publishing their paper. Of course, such hijacked journals are not indexed, and apart from the dangers regarding academia, there might be some other financial issues. For example, they will be asking for credit cards. So such information, such sensitive information might be shared by hijacked journals because they have no connection with the academia here. Their only aim is, as Beall explains here, pocketing the money. So that is the best definition for hijacked journals. Okay, now I'd like to leave the stage to Milan. Milan has conducted a very large study, and he will be presenting his findings to us.
Hello everyone. I hope that I have control. I think I haven't control to the...
Just a second, I stopped remote control, so I stopped it.
What is our research question? Our research question is if articles in high-ranked journals, which are in Journal Citation Record or SNP, less likely to plagiarize than authors in predatory journals, and how we wish to prove this. We use a core data set. Core data set is a big data set which is aggregated from more than 10,000 repositories all over the world, but in open access is only a data set from 2018 with 9.8 million of unique documents. And what is problem with this core database or data set? Problem is that metadata are not so haven't good quality. Why? Because they aggregated from different sources, and these sources people insert this metadata into repositories. So what we have done, we use this metadata and also we use original PDF documents, and we first transform these PDF documents into text, then we clean text. Very important is, for example, if you have inside a text some characters which is not visible, but these characters is also important for detection. For example, to the determination of word, or for determination of an engram. So this is first. Then we improve metadata quality with Crossref API. Everyone knows that Crossref is one of the one organization which offer DOI identifiers, and publisher if want to have DOI for an article needs to transfer metadata about this article in Crossref, and these metadata are very good quality. The same is Microsoft Academic Graph is also one very good source, and in core dataset they have also connections. So in some they have mappings between core IDs and Microsoft Academic Graphs ID, and so it's possible to correction metadata and also to enrich metadata with these two sources. Also, what we have used, we use also journal citation record and SNIP record list of journals, and we determine with these lists impact factors and field of science for journals. Important in this case is ISSN numbers, and with these ISSN numbers it's possible to define, and also important is year of publication. I will show you in the next slide. Then what we have done, we compute hashes from every sentence. Then we deduplicate documents also because repositories have same documents, and core database aggregates or these documents, they have some duplicated items, so we deduplicate this according to authors, according to title, according to publisher, according to publishing year, and also according to coverage of hashes. Then we define similarity for each document. This is simple method. We first define candidates, but we use only this 9.8 million of records. So this is not a whole database from the world, but only from this data set. And when we have candidates, then we compare each document with our document on the level of text, of words, how I say, of sequence of characters. On this picture, we have in Slovenia a database of from journal citation record and from SNIP records, and we defined impact factor from the latest year, which is published in core database for every journal. And what we can see in some cases, we have also different quarters in some journals, and we use the best quarter. And when we analyze this database, we analyze average similarity of journals which did not have an impact factor, had an impact factor in the SNP or GCR database, or have been included in the list of predatory journals or hijacked, or the publishers have been included in the list of predatory publishers. All journals that has less than 10 articles in core database have been excluded from the analysis. We didn't have all journal papers from a journal, only part of these papers which have been published in open access. And also, when we calculated similarity of individual articles, we excluded all articles published later than our article. Also, all text of document shorter than 10 kilobytes, we also excluded. Why? Because in some cases we have very short papers, or we have only abstracts, and also all text which were similar to one other text by more than 85%, and also we also see if authors are the same, then we excluded this from the similarity report. And what we can see, this is summary data, we can see that average percent of similarity on the level of characters, one document to other document, is 28.79 in core dataset. In open access articles for journals is 13.76%. In Beall'slist, journals from Beall'slist, percent is 15% is average similarity. But you can see we have only 12,000 papers from journals from the Beall'slist. And on this page, in this slide, you can see average similarities. You can see that first is one journal from Russia with 64% of similarity. The second is one older journal. We have papers only to 2010, but this journal has been in 2010 in fourth quarter of GCR and third quarter in Scopus. what is interesting on the first page, between first 20 journals, we have radiotherapy and oncology. This is from first quarter with impact factor 4.337, and this journal has average similarity of papers for 41.23%. And there is a lot of plagiarism inside this journal, and also on all journals on the first page. There is self-plagiarism, there is copy-paste plagiarism, there is paraphrasing, and in some cases I have seen also in some Russian journals, I have seen also translated plagiarism, because they use similar references, and sequence of references is the same as in, for example, in one English paper. There is example of journal citation record and SNIP record journals which are in this. You can see that also on the first page we have a lot of journals from first quarter. I don't know if they have good peer review or not, but it is there is a lot of plagiarism inside. Also, what we have done is analysis of average plagiarism for quarters from 2010 to 2018. We think that this degree of average plagiarism needs to decrease, but it's on the same level. Maybe on the 2018 is a little bit lower. The same is in SNIP database, journals from SNIP database. Also, what is interesting, because we have field of study, what we have seen, for example, that first 10 from first 10 are almost all from the medicine. Some are from physics, but you can see transplantation, hematology, cardiovascular system. So in medicine, they have, how I say, they recycle a lot of texts with same authors and also other authors from the same institution. The same is in SNP, SNIP, this scope if we have field of study from the SNIP. Why is different average coverage in SNIP and in GCR? Problem is that some journals don't have SNIP range, another don't have, or SNP don't have also impact factor from for some journals which have impact factor from GCR. So, and also some papers are not included in the journal list, but because journal is not in the haven't 10 papers, but if we work on the aggregation, then we can see that also we include these papers into analysis. And the last, we have articles from predatory journals. What we have seen? We have seen that if we compare predatory journals with other journals, that the average plagiarism is a little bit greater, but the high average plagiarism is for this path of science is 31.88%. It's half of the best of the journal which have the highest average coverage. So I think that it's not depends only on peer review. Quality of paper depends on researchers who write paper and who want to obey academic integrity and also ethics. This is all from my side.
Right, so Shiva.
Yeah, thanks, Milan. Thanks for your complete analysis of these PPJs. I only got one slide to explain, but I just explore that a little bit further about the potentially predatory journals, who publish on those kind of journals, probably why, and I got some most common excuses from some of the publishers. So as far as who, to be honest, it's almost everyone, every folks on the research cycle, but mostly the early career researchers from mainly from developing countries, or the people who are from developing countries but doing their research in the most developed countries as well, because they are more or less targeted by these journals by giving the incentive that yes, even at the first year of your studies you can get things published. So they are eluded into the wrong assumption, yeah, I can go for a publication. So mostly it's early career researchers. I'm saying that it's mostly from developing countries, but it is not entirely from developing countries. Please remember that as well. And the second set of people are the deceived people. These are the vanity publication. They contact what I call the people, mid-career researchers, or even the established researchers who have got a high reputation, and then more or less elude them that, you know, you are the expert in the field. We are trying to publish this particular chapter or particular book. We wanted to invite you for a review on that subject area. Mostly they started by saying that it's free, but when I got one or two experience from one of my colleagues who went into this, and then first they ask, oh, it's free for publication, but when they publish, when they submit, then they will immediately be asked for us to pay. Probably, you know, more or less force them to pay as well. There are incidents in my previous universities which the university need to intervene and try to stop these things. And the third set is the independent researchers. Again, this is another area that we as an European network of academic integrity are trying to help these independent researchers, because they do not have any control or policies to follow. They do some research and they got some results, and they are very eager to publish. And unfortunately, most of the mainstream publishers are a bit reluctant to accept the research from independent researchers. They always check their the credentials and things, and because some of them they don't want to delay, they go to the PPJs as well. And other criteria is the defeated person, so-called defeated person, people who try to publish into the mainstream journals again and again, rejection after rejection after rejection, and they come to the point that there's no way that I'm going to publish with the normal. There are reasons for that. I'll come to that in a minute. Into the normal journals, so I will go for that as well. And in certain countries, that the research is defined as number of publication rather than the quality of publication. It's not fair for me to name those countries, but in those countries that I call them as esteemed hunters, that means they wanted to increase the number of publication, and they are more or less will filio or without their will, they go for PPJs as well. If you consider why they are doing that, most of the early career researchers are mostly young and inexperienced, and especially the one of the issues with because most of you would agree with me who have research students from the developing countries, they are the research students from the developing countries always reluctant to consult their supervisors. So they were targeted, specifically targeted, and because they are inexperienced, they submitted. Once they submitted, they go into the black hole. They were forced to pay for it, and then in the end, their results is no longer even useful for the other journals. And another area which is a bit interesting for me, that in certain countries, all of a sudden, the affordability of the researchers have increased, especially in certain part of the world, that the research funding also included publication costs. And in those kind of countries, and if it is, there's no policies regulating institutional policies, then the affordability of independent researcher or individual researcher is there, so they will use the affordability and then publish as well. And in some other areas, there are social cultural conditions. They are reluctant to get criticism, so they go for the publishers who accept without any criticism, rather than getting you. To be honest, most of you have experienced some of them. Some of the reviewers comment, I wanted to, bite somebody because the way they review is so critical. But that's the way we do the research. But in some other countries, they are not perceiving that as a constructive way, rather than they are perceiving as a demeaning way of research. So that's the reason they are going for the. And there are institutional pressures. Publish or perish, especially in countries where the number of publication is the measure for the research esteem. And some of them, they actually simply do their own motivation. They just wanted to be known, whether it is a PPJ or normal journal. And also the demands on scholarly publication as well. This is something is very new. I can give you one example because it was highlighted in several journals. There's a journal called Oncotarget in the field of cancer research. And in 2016, it has been named by the journal community or publisher community as an upcoming star of cancer biology. And it has got very high reputation. And then because of the reputation, I think something went into their mind, and they started not checking reviewers, and they are entirely dependent on the reviewers suggested by the authors, and then the reviewers and authors, they started to play the game, and then it was highlighted by whistleblowers, and now that the journal is in jeopardy as well. So there are the other side as well, although very, very limited examples are there, but this is a good example from my side, medical side of it. And the most common excuses which I have found is that, especially the developing countries, early career researchers, they say that they got a bias about the bias the Western journals have against them. So to be honest, as my research is from medical side of it, most of the time, before we get published, at least there will be 2 or 3 rejections before we and those rejections are actually helpful for me to improve. But some other early career researchers, they do not perceive like this is a constructive criticism. And others has got what I call an inbuilt inability that, oh, we are insufficiently trained. I don't want to expose myself about my training, so I rather go for the easy option. And most of the established researchers, this is what happened to one of my colleagues in my previous university. He was actually unaware of the reputation or the lack of reputation of the journal, because, as Salim has already highlighted, or Milan has highlighted, and Irene is going to highlight, is the fact that they've got a flashy website. I mean, their website is much more attractive than even the normal journal website. So that's one of the reason for some other researchers as well. And there's one person said that I was invited by the journal identifying me as a reputable expert in this field, and he got carried away with that as well. So there are so many different excuses, and each excuses, if you look individually, it might look like a good justification. But those people, I feel pity on them, because somebody need to tell them the normal procedures. I mean, we are very good at detecting things and then publishing those as a whistleblowers, but we also need to, and that's one of the aim for the ENI, is that we also need to train these people how to select these journals appropriately. And that is probably the next target for our ENI. I will now pass on to Irene.
So it's actually Sonia next.
Sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
Okay, I got the option now. Hi, my name is Sonia Bielova from Uppsala University. So I'm going to talk a bit about how you can spot a predatory journal. So first of all, what's the difference between a potential predatory journal and normal reputable publishing channels? In predatory journals, the aim is to publish as many papers as possible, while in a normal journal, the aim is to publish quality papers. So you have quantity and quality, of course, quantity because they are after the money, the author processing charge, which the only aim is to get rich, basically. They have usually extremely broad fields. Once again, the aim is to publish as many papers as possible to get money, while normal journals usually have very limited fields. They promise a speedy peer review process. You can read it as none at all. And while you have normally a regular peer review process, often double-blinded, and they have a high acceptance rate. They will basically accept everything. I've seen papers where it was proven that polar bears were people, and some other really strange papers, because everything can get accepted, while normal journals, of course, have low acceptance rate. So there are several lists you might want to check. Beall'slist was the first list of that kind, but it's not updated anymore. There are other lists. Stop Predatory Journals is one of them. Cabells has a blacklist and a whitelist. Blacklists with potential predatory journals, and predatory journals, and whitelist with the journals that are whitelisted as okay journals. And Directorate of Open Access Journals is the third list. But the problem with these lists is that you can't really trust them, because there may be journals not found in either whitelists or in blacklists, and it might happen that the journal is incorrectly classified. The third problem is that journals get hijacked. So if you have a really good, reputable journal, it can be sold to a company that it's dishonest, and it transforms it to a predatory journal. So it's not always the case that you can just look at the list and think that everything is okay. There is research that has shown that there are, for instance, in this paper, 72 journals and 42 publishers were included in both a blacklist and a whitelist. And the problem is also that criteria for the inclusion differs. So you can have different criteria for inclusion in the whitelist and different in the blacklist. And that's why you might have this type of overlap. So looking at the list is very good, but it's not enough. So how to spot a predator? And I would like you to invite you to write in a chat. What would you do? How do you know, besides of going to lists? Oh, something happened here. Any ideas? I'm waiting here for the chat. This is a workshop, so you have to work. I don't know why my things are changing all the time. I don't know if someone else also has.
It's my fault because I've got
okay.
If I try to do anything here, it keeps changing it. So it's apologies
okay.
for that. I'm trying to read the chat and it's changing your.
Okay, let me see in the chat. Definitely quick.
I can't read the chat and without changing your screen, so it's not letting me do that.
Okay, I'm going to read you what's in the chat. So definitely quick peer review and acceptance. Yeah, quick peer review is definitely one thing that you might want to look for. A quality peer review takes time. So that's one thing. Acceptance notice within a week. None of the articles published, number of the articles published per issue. Yeah, good. Other ideas? This is a workshop, so you have to work. Yeah, there's a paper you can read about the mock conferences. Very different articles in the journal. I read your conference paper and realize that you are an expert, citation. Reverse image search the images of the editors. There are very good ideas here. Okay. So let me see here. The first one, the publisher. Yeah, bad English, also one. So you usually take a look at the publisher of a journal, because often you have an overwhelmingly large suite of new journals released at one occasion or during a very short period of time. The editor-in-chief of the journal is editor-in-chief also for other journals with widely different focus. This is from one of the predatory publishers. And as you can see, there are so many different areas they are publishing in. That is a warning sign. Of course, you can have a large publisher. I mean, Springer is a good publisher, publishing in so many different areas. So that this is not the only criteria, of course, but that might ring a bell if they have too many different areas. The journal itself, the publisher is not a member of any recognized professional organization committed to best publishing practices like CoBook is. The journal is not indexed in well-established electronic databases. So not only black and white lists, also look at the databases. Are they listed there? Many of these journals, or very often predatory publishing Germans, claim to be leading publisher, even if they just got started. So that's also something you might want to check. Check with your colleagues. That's very important. As an early career researcher, go and ask your supervisor, go and check with your colleagues. If they haven't heard of that journal, there might be some tricky things about it. So check it out with your colleagues. Look at the editorial office. Where is it? Sometimes there are some false locations, or there are no real editorial office or very few people in it. There are more people, things coming in the chat, like checking whether persons indicate participation. Sorry, I missed it. Now it disappeared for me. Okay, I'm going to go back to that. Title of the journal. For some reason, most of them are very international or American. So usually, if they claim to be American or some other national affiliation, check where the journal actually is published in, because you can have American journal of something, it can be located on a whole different continent. International is extremely popular. Not all international journals are, of course, bad journals, but it's when you look at your spam mailbox, you'll see that quite a few of these predatory predatory journals have international in the title. Another thing predatory publishers usually elaborate with is to mimic another journal title. So they take a reputable journal and change just something a little bit, or something. So it mimics the original title, so that people would assume that the journal they want the reputable journal they want to publish in, but actually it's something completely else. When it comes to the website, previously predatory journal websites were very unprofessional, but I would say that nowadays many of them have really good flashy website, so that you can't be sure but just looking at the website. But what you can look at is, do they present an editorial board? Do they give sufficient details on names and affiliations? Look at one thing of warning here. You can take a look at the editorial board, but what they do sometimes is to include people without the person's knowledge. So even if you have reputable people on the editorial board, it still might be a predatory journal that has hijacked simply the name and put these people as editors without their knowledge. Websites do not usually reveal the journal's editorial office location, or they use incorrect address. So some check in Google Maps where it leads. They usually don't have a clearly stating publishing schedule, and you have quite a lot of non-related and non-academic advertisements on the website. Impact figures. This is from one of these websites. I liked it that it was spelled incorrectly even, but false. The impact figures are usually false in these types of websites. They provide an impact factor in spite of the fact that the journal is new, so they can't have any impact yet. It has to be calculated. Or they claim an unrealistically high impact based on some really strange and weird alternative impact factors. And there is a website where you can read more about these strange metrics. Fees, of course, they are after your money. And some of those journals are not only happy with getting this water processing charge, but they also charge you for submission or handling fee instead of publication fee. So you have to pay even if the paper is not accepted for publication. But the types of submissions or publication fees and what they amount to are not clearly stated usually on that journal's website. And peer review, unrealistic promises. They can do it in days or weeks, so it basically tells you there's no peer review at all. When it comes to copyright, the journal does not describe copyright agreements clearly or demands the copyright of the paper while they claim to be an open access journal. And they don't have any strategies how to handle misconduct or conflict of interest. And they have some questionable practices. This is also from one of these, from one journals I found simply by going to my spam box and checking the links. In this, the plagiarism policy states that 70%, if it's a paper where the plagiarism policy is less than 30% is going to be unique. So you need to have 75% unique content, which means it can be 25% plagiarized, which is quite strange. Of course, look at the quality of papers in the journal, because usually it's very poor research quality. They might not be academic at all. They can have pseudoscience, of course, but also it might be so that there are some papers that actually are good, because not all papers published in predatory journals are necessarily bad papers, because people go and to these journals without knowledge. So occasionally there might even be some good papers, but they haven't gone through peer review. There are usually, however, very low quality of papers. You can have errors in the titles or abstracts, bad English, typographical or factual errors throughout the papers. And what is very significant is if you have articles outside the stated scope of the journal, but usually the scope is really huge. Invitations, yeah, you get all those emails and they invite you to submit an article. They have no idea about your field of expertise. Sometimes I had to Google what I'm apparently an expert in. And that's quite funny because I had no idea I was an expert in that. Usually, email contact address is very strange. You can have Gmail or Yahoo, but not always. Sometimes they have professional email addresses, or what seems to be professional. But if you ever have days when you feel a bit depressed, just go there. You get so much flattering emails. It's so exaggerated. You're always reputable and scholar and stuff like that. So it's yeah. Usually these emails are in bad language. They have sometimes contradictory claims and so on. I'm going to show you some examples. So here's respected. My name, hope you have a great day. They want to associate with eminent people like you. As I told you, it's really flattering. And you can see that it's quite a bad language. They usually want to put a pressure on you, so they give you a short amount of time to answer to them. As you see, they always state that they have some impact factors, which is not, of course, not true. Here's another one I found, and this is really cool because you have a Gmail up here. I mean, you can see that paper submission, no deadline, publish paper within 2 days. No deadline, submit anytime. The language is quite, impact factor quite high. And what I liked here is that they, instead of having where they are, what databases are they in? They are indexed in Google Scholar and Mendeley and Academia Edu. It's just to get a laugh. What kind of things they want to appear to be a reputable journal. And of course, there's a scope of the area of disciplines they publish in. As you can see in this paper, and if you haven't noticed, I'm apparently expert both in medicine and in humanities and social sciences. But you can see here that's basically everything they can come up with: anthropology, business studies, communication, performing arts. Everything is in this international so-called journal. Once again, a Gmail up here. So, Irene, it's back to you. I just want to, before I end, I would like to see here some comments. We have, okay, there was someone writing that there was a journal having an address at a pizza restaurant. Quite funny. And a few years ago, Robin writes, I was offered full peer review and guaranteed acceptance within 24 hours of submission. Yeah, that's basically the claim. Okay, Irene, it's up to you.
Hi, thanks. Can you, yeah, I need to get control.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Right then, well, wasn't that interesting? Fascinating. I have to say, I've got my team members to do most of the work, which is, how you define delegation, isn't it really? But I think you'll agree they did a fantastic job. So I just want to summarize now and look at what we can do about this. So we've looked at all the negatives, we've looked at how you identify them, but it's not easy. And you can see there are lots of incentives that make people want to publish in these journals. That's how they succeed. That's why they're such a massive industry and why there's so many of them, and they're making a lot of money. So let's have a look and see what we can do about it. So first of all, I'm suggesting we look for ways to reduce the demand. So we need to work on the kinds of people that are likely to use these or susceptible to using them, and see if we can persuade them not to use them. Because the best way to put them out of business is to stop the demand. So we need to understand what's driving demand. And some of those things came out in the presentation here, particularly in Shiva's slide, why people use these journals and what drives them to use them. And certainly in my own research, I've come across quite a lot of cases in different countries where, for example, where PhD students are required to publish, say, 2 or 3 journal papers before they can get their PhD. Now, that's really, really hard, within a time-limited PhD program to actually get published. So these are the early career researchers that are going to be driven to using these journals, these potentially predatory journals, where they can get a fast turnaround, where they don't have to go through rejection after rejection and through proper peer review. But so we need to make sure that young career researchers, PhD students in particular, are very much aware of how peer review works, why it's important, understand how you identify a good quality journal, and help them to get published. So understand what's driving demand, that's the first one. And some of these rules are set at a national level within a country, and some of them are set at an institutional level. So we need to try to influence decision makers who make these rules to make them understand that these are false incentives. These are fake ways to kind of drive the demand. And look at institutional policies to see if there's anything in the institutional policies that's driving the demand, that's forcing people. But also look at the education, look at the training. So partly what this group is really interested in doing, and one of the reasons we've got a workshop in the summer school next week, is that we're interested in raising awareness among young researchers, PhD students and so on, about why it's wrong to publish in these journals, why it's not actually going to help their career. So, they need to understand why are they publishing? What is the reason behind publishing? Is it just to make up a quota? Is it this publish or perish business? What you actually want to do when you're publishing is you want somebody to read your research. If you publish in a predatory journal, nobody's going to read that who you want to read it. Predatory journals don't curate the papers that they publish. They will take your money. If you're lucky, it will exist for a little while, but it won't be long lasting. It won't persist. It won't be subject to peer review. Therefore, it won't be corrected if there are any errors in there. It won't be improved. So all the reasons that you'd want to publish are negated by publishing in a predatory journal. Similarly, if you go to one of these fake conferences, the people that you'll meet at these conferences, and they're generally set in some kind of exotic location, but the kind of people that you meet in these conferences are not interested in your research. They're going there to publish their own, to disseminate their own research, which is probably in a completely different field to yours. So you're not going to get an audience who's interested in what you've got to say. So raising awareness is really very important, and we can do that through training and guidance, and point young students. But I would contradict something that Shiva said, because I would say through my own research, we came across a lot of established professors who need to have so many publications in order to get a full professorship. And the way they do that is they get published in predatory journals, so they can up their rate of publishing. Or either that, or they do salami slicing of their research, or they duplicate the research, or they publish in different languages through translating the same research and so on. So there are all sorts of ways that they can up their publication rate. And so I won't name the countries, but there are some countries where it's mandatory to get so many publications. And unless those that set the rules are clear about what kind of journals they need to publish in, then this kind of practice will continue, and these journals will continue to thrive. So we need to make sure that we raise awareness, not just with young career researchers, but with all researchers, and with more experienced ones as well. We've looked at how, and quite rightly, we realise that predatory journals are not easy to categorise. And so if we can find a consistent way of categorising them, I know people have tried, it's going to be hard, but that's one of the things we're looking at. Is there a way that we can categorise them? And in that way, we're more likely to be able to identify them. But if you look at some of the pointers that Sonia made in her slides, it's fairly obvious that those examples that she showed you are not genuine, reputable journals. But there are some that are marginal, and we have to be aware that not all journals that are new and low quality are predatory. Perhaps they're just fairly immature in the processes they use. So we must be careful how we categorise journals. The other thing we can do is support bodies like COPE and Retraction Watch and so on, and the excellent work that they do to highlight malpractice in research and publishing, and they do a fantastic job. So that's all I have to say, apart from there's a site there that you might want to look at and choose the right journal. So the answer to the question that we started with, does it matter where you publish? Yes, of course it matters where you publish. I hope you all understood that before we started. But there is a website there you might want to look at where you can get a little bit more information. So I'm going to stop there. We've got a little bit of time for questions, and because I wasn't able to look at the questions while other people were presenting, I don't know whether there are any outstanding questions. So I'm going to kind of share the platform with all my fellow team members. Are there any questions that you spotted that you would like to come and answer, or are there any questions that our audience would like to put either in the chat or the Q&A? I can see there are 4 unanswered questions in the Q&A now. So over to everybody. It's open mic. Who would like to take some questions?
I'll start the question to Sarah, because Sarah in the chat said that there is some problem with the omics article. Can I ask Sarah to elaborate that a little bit, please?
Is that one of the examples that we shared?
No, it's an entirely different one. I think Sarah, isn't Sarah Eaton here?
Can we unmute Sarah? Sarah?
Yeah, just give me a second. I'll try to.
Do you want to unmute her and let her talk? There you are. How privileged.
Sarah, I hope you're okay with being filmed as well. I'm just going to promote you to panelist. So, here's Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for an excellent workshop. No, it was Debbie had posted an article, and it was just behind a sign-up wall. So I'll see if I can get it some other way. But no, just wanted to thank you all. It was tremendous workshop.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Very much appreciated. And thanks for staying to the end. There's a lot in there, wasn't there? So, we've got some, there's a link there. Oh, is that Debbie?
Yeah, Deborah.
Yeah, yes, okay. I'm not conferences. Yeah.
Yeah. While waiting for more questions, I would just like to invite you all to join the conference that starts tomorrow. We have some excellent keynotes, amongst them Sarah and Erika Löfström and Guy Curtis. We have some great panels and fantastic presentations and workshops. And some Pecha Kucha presentations. It's going to be really fun. And you'll also get a chance to meet our sponsors if you would like to chat with them and ask them what they are doing when it comes to academic integrity.
So we have an anonymous attendee who has admitted that their early submissions included a predatory journal that was quite unconscious. They didn't know it at the time, and it's one of the highest citations. So thank you for being honest. That's interesting. And then Laura, can you comment on the fact that the results shown by Milan are possibly mainly due to self-plagiarism?
Yes, maybe I will give an answer. It is impossible to exclude references because of different citation styles, but also, in some journals they haven't very good, template, and they also don't have, they allow also to use, very not all metadata which is important for citation in references. So it is not possible to, it's possible maybe in some journals, but not in all journals. And another thing is, we have found a lot of self-plagiarism. We have found in this database also a lot of recycling, also a lot of copy-paste plagiarism. So, for example, one chapter from one paper is used in another paper. Also, they have also the same tables, the same images, because we have also original documents inside. So we also do manually. We also inspect some more suspectable documents manually. We wish to publish this, yes, in one journal. We will see how it will be, but I think that it is important that someone knows that also in journals with impact factors are a lot of plagiarism. Also, it's very interesting. I didn't know before that a lot of medical papers are plagiarized.
Yeah, there was a question about that, Milan.
Yes.
Gomasi was saying said he was very troubled about it and asked what could be done about it. And I guess Shiva, you might want to comment on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons for that is, I think these ghost, the PPJs, they realize the fact there's a high demand, and also there's a high percentage of rejections in medical journals as well. So they are making use of that, and then as somebody has already written in the chat, that either they put international in front or American Journal of whatever, or British Journal of, then that will be attractive. And also some of them, they clone the reputable journals in such a way they change one sentence or one word, so that it's more or less, if you are not careful, you will end up looking for a journal. They end up submitting the PPJ rather than the actual journal. I mean, it's almost happened to me because I checked it. The first Google search brought the PPJ rather than the original journal. And it's almost looked same and everything. And I think I have a feeling that by paying Google, then you can increase the, probably Milan knows a bit more than this, you can increase the number of hits in Google in a
so if the disreputable journal comes up first, click on that. That's, and I was very interested in this the business of the editorial board, because I have a little hobby when I find an editorial board that looks too good to be true. I find a few really reputable people on the board and I email them and ask them if they know they're on the board. And inevitably they come back and they're so embarrassed, and they take legal action against the journal. So I've got a little hobby. I do that when I have time. I haven't done it for a while, but it's quite fun to do that. Actually, just tell people and their institutions that they're on these boards, just to check whether they really know about it. And you can check, because if you go on the person's personal profile on their website, you can see whether they say they're on the board of that journal, because often they would say that. So that's quite interesting.
It's actually happened to me as well for the 2 or 3 PPJ journals. I mean, my name was there as an editorial board, and I need to contact them, not once, twice, or the third time, with the help of the legal team to remove it.
There is a question here, which is interesting, and as Sarah's still with us, I don't know whether she'd like to come in here. It says, on what kind of criteria is the publication fee fixed by journals? I certainly don't know the answer to that. I don't know whether Sarah wants to comment on that or whether you'd rather not.
I don't actually know. I know that it's set by the publisher. I don't know much more than that. No, it's a good question. I'll ask now and get back to you.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Any more questions from anyone, or shall we just wind up and then thank everyone for attending? Well, thank you very much to all the members of the group who presented so eloquently. Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you very much to the audience for staying with us. And most of you are still here, which is very good. And for your interesting questions. And I hope you don't ever publish in a predatory journal in your lives anymore, if you have been doing already. And please sign up for the conference if you haven't done so already. And I hope we'll see you in the next few days. Anyone else like to say any closing remarks? Salim?
Yes, I'd like to ask for your advice regarding a regulation in my country. In this presentation, we indicated if the journal is charging a submission or handling fee, which is not article processing charges, then we consider such journals as predatory. However, Council of Higher Education in Turkey indicated that if the journal is has a requirement for article processing charges, then it is suspicious, could be predatory. However, if they are asking for handling fee, then it is safe. So if they are asking for handling fee, and in addition to this, they might be asking for article processing charges, then it is safe. So it seems...
that seems contradictory.
Yeah.
To me, because the norm is an article processing charge, which is how open access, the gold model works, isn't it? But not a handling fee.
So
that's an example of where perhaps we ought to try and influence national policy. I don't know how we do it, but I know you've got friends in high places. There's that nice Mr. Erdogan who kept looking at us all the time when we were in Turkey from all these big buildings.
We need to find some people in Ankara to contact Council of
Yeah.
Higher Education.
There's
Otherwise,
a challenge for us.
we cannot have any impact on national policy. So that's a pity.
Well, I don't know. Well, let's put that on our agenda and see whether we can find a way to influence national policy.
Okay.
And if one of the things I didn't say is if anyone in the audience would like to join our working group, then please contact me. It's all on the website. And somebody did ask earlier on if they can have the slides. Well, the recording is will be available. And I don't see any reason why they can't have the slides as well, but I'm not sure how we get them to everyone, but the answer is probably. Okay, I think anyone else want to make any closing remarks? 2 minutes.
I just want to welcome you all to the conference once again. You can still register, there is lots of time, and I hope to see you tomorrow at 9 o'clock Central European time when we all start with an opening ceremony.
Okay, see you all in the morning then. Thanks.
And thank you so much for today. Great session.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.